In a world where technology is rewriting the rules at lightning speed, disruption isn't coming, it's already here. The question is, are you ready? Welcome to Tech Week, your insider's guide to the digital revolution, transforming business, policy, and innovation in the Philippines and beyond. I am your host, Jack Madrid, and we are cutting through the noise to bring you the real stories shaping our future. We're talking to the risk takers, the game changers, and the architects of tomorrow. Unfiltered and straight from the source. This is not just tech news, this is the roadmap to what is next. This is Tech Week, and this is how we decode the future. The world of work is evolving at an unprecedented pace. As AI, automation, and digital transformation reshape industries, the definition of what it means to be future-ready is also changing. For the Philippines, a country rich in talent and potential, the challenge is not just about creating more jobs, but preparing our people to thrive in the jobs and work types of tomorrow. SeeMeSol brings a unique perspective shaped by years of experience with global employers, technology innovators, and the next generation of talent. With a deep understanding of both the opportunities and the gaps in our education to employment pipeline, David is here to share valuable insights on how we can build a stronger bridge between schools and industries, close the job skills mismatch, and empower Filipino talent to lead. Evolving rapidly. So I'd like to ask, if from your perspective, what does it really mean to be a future-ready Filipino today?
Great question, Jack. So I think as we become more digital every day, every year, year on year, access to knowledge is becoming free and infinite through the mobile devices. In the connections of education and industry, finding that the actual skill gaps around particular hard skills and soft skills, ability to be analytical, to provide advisory on top of data, to support particular business processes. So areas such as healthcare, education, maritime, hospitality, they are becoming also technology enabled. So our students of today need to understand how to deploy technology into the work processes needed by our industry employers.
Sounds like you are a proponent of this move from credentials-based education to skills-based learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what employers are looking for is specific skills, sometimes more narrow but deep skills. Education by its nature is broad and extended. I think mainstream education is moving to being more modular and more micro. What we need to do is to provide credentials at that micro and more modular level to allow students to top up their skills and knowledge prior to moving from education into industry.
Yeah, we've begun to hear the term micro-credentialing quite often with schools like Mapua and the Batangas State University leading that charge. Now, you've also mentioned some of the digital transformation reshaping industries. Some skills, but what kind of mindset do you think will be most critical in the coming years?
Well, I think it's adaptability. Again, change is the constant. You have to be able to adapt with your skills wherever you are in the Philippines. We have schools on board with our platform from Tuguegarao to Tawi-Tawi, and the local economies are very different from the north to south of the Philippines. So you have to be adaptable in your local community. Whether it's more agricultural, technology-based, it doesn't matter. It's how you apply your skills to local opportunity, connecting yourself into local industry to ensure you get that job and that income you need to support your family.
Right. You've obviously, you've been here since 2002, and you've been a frequent visitor. In fact, you're almost Filipino, I think, David. What changes have you seen in the past couple of decades? Do you see a still strong and growing job market for tech talent in the country, and where do the biggest opportunities lie?
Yeah, so I've been in Asia since 2001, come to the Philippines since 2002. When I first arrived here in the Philippines, I spent a lot of time in Makati. Bonifacio Global City was just starting to emerge. I remember the novelty of seeing the grid road system as opposed to the Makati, London, Paris-like chaos of traffic. So I think there's been change at every level. The change of the use of technology, the proliferation of technology, how digital we've all become over the years, but also the nature of industry. There's so many more international firms now in the Philippines, many of whom are attracted by the skill sets and capabilities of the workforce. So clearly IT BPM is a great example of an industry that's really lent into that Philippine psyche and level of education. So I think mobility, digital skill sets, applying those into industry has been a key growth since 2002, and year on year that has continued. I'm now getting out to the provinces, aside from NCR, and seeing how those cities, those digital cities, those next wave cities are emerging now, again bringing through the talent that's local and connecting them with foreign firms and local firms who are moving not just into the Philippines, but into the provinces and countrysides to tap into that talent. So I think change everywhere. The consumers, industry, the role of government, really leaning in to make sure that opportunity is available for everybody across the Philippines.
I like the way you keep focusing on that education to employment line, right? That pathway. But something gets in the way of that, and that's what I want to talk about next, the job skills mismatch. What gaps do you see, David, between the worlds of education and employment, and how can we all work together to bridge that gap?
Right. We've got two very different worlds. We've got the world of industry, which is very dynamic, quarter-driven, monthly-driven on results and resources. And that's moving at a pace which is unparalleled as they digitize their own industries and their own companies and processes. You have to match that with a heavily regulated industry, which is the education industry, where you've got curriculums which may be 5 or 6 years out of date, just because of the way curriculums get set, teachers get trained, and the courses come into use. So you have a separation between industry and education, and that's a challenge. So what we need to, and I think TESDA, with the support of IBPAP and the community, is doing a great job of asking industry to stop complaining about lacks of skills and to lean in and help bridge that gap. So now many of the leading companies that are part of IBPAP are creating content, skills-based content, that we can drop into the education sector to top up the learning process, to ensure that when graduates come out of public and private schools, there's not just a good solid education on numeracy, literacy and language. They're actually coming out with hard skills, technical skills, but also soft skills, the way to manage call centers, processes online. So I think the gap is extending, but I think the work that's happening between government, industry and education is working hard to fill that gap with more modular industry skill-based learning as well. So it's a challenge, but I see a lot of good energy aimed at closing that gap between the two worlds today.
So, that's good to hear. We often hear, David, about some, I guess, bureaucratic processes and bottlenecks that get in the way. What more do you think needs to be done, and what should the stakeholders be more aware of? Because technology is just moving things along really, really fast, and by the time things get approved, funds get allocated, might be too late. So what are these bottlenecks that need to be addressed, you think?
So it's safe to say there's no shortage of talent in the Philippines, not in the cities and the provinces as well. And it's safe to say there's no shortage of opportunity. We know members of the IBPAP community with hundreds of free open positions they're looking to fill. So we have talent, we have opportunities. What we don't have is the connection between the two. This comes back to the topic of accessibility of that talent. How can a school, whether it's in Tawi-Tawi or in Iloilo or in Tuguegarao, how can those schools provide their talent more seamlessly to industry so those open positions can be filled? That's really the mission that we're supporting, bridging that gap, providing accessibility, using technology for talent right across the Philippines, across all the provinces and the major cities.
Let's talk about what you've learned in the past couple of years at SeeMeSol. What trends do you see emerging? What are the kinds of jobs that the private sector and companies are hiring for, and what are some of those specific skills that they're prioritizing?
Yeah.
I'm really interested, and I think our audience would be interested to hear from you where this talent supply chain will be in the coming several years.
So we've spoken to, engaged directly with hundreds of the higher education institutes. If you add them all together, there are 2,000 HEIs, 3,500 senior high schools, and maybe 4,000 TVET schools. There's 9,000 plus institutes of learning here in the Philippines. And we do assessments, we've done assessments of hundreds of schools. What we're seeing is a desire to migrate from just focusing on the education piece and rolling into this topic of employability as a new metric of success. And we run what we call a MARA study. So each school can take a survey and it assesses their ability and their readiness to provide that career services function, which effectively is the bridge between education to industry. The survey takes it's 20 questions around 4 categories: people, process, technology, and content collaboration. What we're seeing is the schools score highly on people, either allocating people to the task of employability, but they score very low on processes, technology, and content. So they really need help to crystallize that desire to support the migration of students through education into industry. But to date, most schools have zero technology supporting that connectivity of the talent into market. And that's really, I think, the biggest learning I have is there's an open opportunity to fill that gap with technology, so students can now enter the local economy or the national digital economy with leading companies that, again, are set up here in the Philippines to tap into that talent pool.
That sounds like a pretty important gap to fill. But we are now going to take a quick break. Trade Talks Tech Week. We'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We continue our discussion with David Padgett. He is the CEO of SeeMeSol. So David, how do you see SeeMeSol helping to revolutionize the way that talent is discovered, matched, and developed, especially in the technology arena?
So the way we're working this challenge is to really invest a lot of time upstream in the talent supply chain. And the talent supply chain starts in the education sector, so senior high school into higher education. Really trying to bring the world of work into each of these schools. So as students leave senior high school, they can make that decision. Is it right for that individual student to go into the world of work or to carry on learning? And as they enter higher education, again, when they graduate, where do they want to take their careers, their energy, and their ambition? As I mentioned before, most schools don't have any technology today to bring the world of work into the classroom. So our portal, our platform is enabling that connection. So each and every school here in the Philippines, public and private, in the cities, in the provinces, as a totally inclusive model, every school can access our software for free. And the idea is that the school can now digitize their undergraduates and their graduates, but also their alumni onto a common platform which connects each and every student, and you're in the Philippines, into a network of employers looking to hire locally, nationally, or even internationally. And that's the first step. As soon as we can digitize that talent, it is now accessible to employers, whether that's for internships and OJTs, whether that's for graduate jobs or alumni jobs, or mentoring and coaching, the first stage is taking that talent, bringing it online in a safe, secure platform provided through their school, and then in a controlled way, enabling that talent to access content across all industries. So again, the IT BPM industry is a great industry, but also logistics, healthcare, maritime, hospitality. Every industry has a desire to influence the future talent, to ensure that they choose that industry as a preferred industry, and that their learning journey is shaping towards fulfilling the needs of that particular industry and those employers. So the first thing is digitizing the talent within the schools, free software for every school. At that point, then releasing that talent into the learning and earning journey through the network to all the employers across the Philippines.
So David, how many school partnerships does SeeMeSol have, and how many students do you have in your database?
So we have tens of thousands of students. We have 120 schools signed and live or in deployment. We have 2,000 TVET schools coming in at the moment. Just last week, I think I met with 8 schools last week. And if I add together, and these are leading schools, some of the biggest, most established, most recognizable schools here in the Philippines. If I look at the numbers of students and alumni those schools alone have that I met with last week in person, there's over 600,000 undergrads, grads, and alumni available to the platform. So as these new schools sign up and roll in, we'll be building that database of all their students in each of those schools. One of the schools right now is putting in 49,000 profiles for their alumni. It's a leading school here in Metro Manila with technology, business, and healthcare students. So we will have millions of students as we roll out our network. Today, the first 120 schools are live, and we have job fairs and our portal operating now here across the Philippines.
So your database is not just composed of existing students, but even alumni can open an account and put their history and CV
absolutely
in SeeMeSol.
One of the big challenges for the universities and colleges is managing that alumni relationship. After graduation, the alumni flies the coop and disappears off.
And there is no cost,
cost.
to opening an account and
zero cost to the school, zero cost to the students and the alumni. They're invited back by their school into our platform, again branded for each individual school. The school can then provide events, talks, engagements, even opportunities and jobs, mentoring and coaching, and further learning through the platform to their alumni, which for the employers is very important because quite often employers don't just want fresh grads. They want people with 2 to 3 years experience, and that's really where the alumni community comes in as a unique proposition. So the school can track, the tracer study is very important for the schools. The schools can track and re-engage with their alumni and recycle that skill and that knowledge into industry as early and mid-career workers, which again many companies are looking for.
You've obviously been deeply engaged, with both schools and employers. What other ways, can we all work together and prepare young Filipinos, to thrive in the future?
Yeah. So I see, we work a lot in Singapore with the Singapore government and the education sector and industry. And the signals coming out of that market is around mentoring and coaching, building deeper and broader relationships than just the pure education piece itself. So I think there's a lot we could do with mentoring and coaching, bringing in mentors and coaches from industry, academe, and the alumni of these schools. When I meet with these university presidents and heads of career services and deans of student affairs, they're always looking, how can we leverage more from our asset base, the school population? There's tons of assets in that alumni. There's tons of assets in industry who are willing to lean in, be coaches and mentors to help steer the journey of these young workers as they leave the world of study into the world of employment. So again, our platform provides that, whether it's internships, mentorship, coaching. We can start to engage that talent that's coming through with a talent that's gone on before and is able now to reach back and pull that next set of students through into successful careers and successful employment.
Sign me up, David. I'd love to be a mentor.
I'd love to have you.
As we wrap up, this very insightful conversation, David, I had another question for you. I mean, if you could redesign how we can future-proof Filipino talent from classroom all the way to career, what would you change or what would you prioritize first?
Great question. So, today I see too much friction between the world of education and the world of work. Technology is able to release that friction, reduce that friction, and eliminate that friction. Where that friction is caused through the education process, where we need to move from the traditional mainstream education to modular micro-learning, where there's not just on-site classroom learning, there's remote learning and hybrid learning. We need to digitize that learning experience to make it more efficient and accessible to all students across the Philippines. At the same time, we do need that industry element to lean in and digitize their exposure to the education sector, influencing and supporting curriculum. So as students come through the system, they are job ready, they're employment ready. So I think digitizing that supply chain, not just on the employability of the job and the hiring side, but on that education side where industry can reconnect with local schools to where these industries are based to make sure that the learning journey is a digital hybrid journey, personalized on the device of the students, and enhanced with AI. Very important to have an AI component there, steering the journey, personalizing that, and really ensuring that as an individual grows through their education sector, they grow with a vision and a mission and ambition to be employed in their industry of preference. Big issues here on underemployment, where students may end up graduating with engineering, but end up working in another industry. Why did that second industry appear as the students graduate? Was it because they had a change of heart, or they couldn't get a job aligned to their education? I think by digitizing early the employability journey with students, engaging in industry, the decisions they make through their education will lead them to a better job, more aligned to their education and more aligned to their ambitions.
So as a parting shot, David, I'm sure many of our stakeholders are watching. What advice would you give? I mean, you are a champion of Filipino talent. You've invested a lot of resources in the Philippines. Our educational system needs help. We all know that. But if Secretary Sonny Angara or our partners in CHED, or even Director General Kiko Benitez were watching, what would you tell them?
We need to build a sustainable network. It needs to be ethical, ethically sound, economically sound, and needs to be technologically sound, which means it's inclusive, accessible, and can support itself. Government has a role to play for sure in helping these networks of talent supply chain to grow and prosper. Governments shouldn't own it. Governments should support the private sector's initiatives, because if governments support it and own it, it's hard to sustain it with government funds. Industry has all the incentives to make this talent supply chain work. So I'd say to Secretary Angara or Secretary Benitez and the teams from DepEd and CHED, Dole and TESDA, DETI and NADA, and DICT, I'd say come together, let's look at a holistic strategy for all education to supply their talent into a platform that can be accessed by all industry and private sector and public sector. And again, a scalable technology that's ethical, economic, and technically sound is the way to do that en masse. We can't have kids in the provinces being disadvantaged by location. Location no longer matters in this sort of digital economy. And I think technology encourages everybody to join and grow networks, grow value, grow experience. And ultimately, individual employability drives national productivity. So GDP comes downstream naturally out of every Filipino working to their highest possible level, earning the highest possible salary in the economy. GDP is a natural result of that kind of initiative.
Well, thank you for that insight. I am sure our audience learned a lot, and I also want to thank you, David, for your support to the IT BPM industry and to IBPAP and our 1.82 million digital Filipino workers throughout the country. We could talk for another hour or so, David, but that will be a wrap for this week's Tech Week. A big thank you to David Padgett for sharing valuable insights. The future is being